Hello, I'm Ruth Selman and I'm an early modern records specialist here at the National Archives. I love using wills for family history research. They can provide a wealth of information to enrich your family history, from identifying networks of family and friends to providing insight into the personality of the will writer and giving a sense of their social status. At its simplest, a will may just leave all the possessions of an individual to their spouse or children. This can be useful in that it confirms the family relationship and gives an idea of the wealth and position of the person writing the will, who is known as the testator. Wills of childless uncles and aunts, on the other hand, can prove to be goldmines, often listing all their siblings and nibblings, as well as more distant relatives. Information found in wills can also be cumulative, providing layers of data which together provide convincing proof of relationships. For example, the wills of Martin Hazelwood and his wife Agnes. These were proved in early 1588 after they died within a couple of days of one another, and they confirmed that their children were John, Alice and George Hazelwood. But the couple also mentioned and left sizable bequests to a Peter Allen, Simon Allen, Nicholas Allen and other members of the Allen family. It is only from the will of their son John Hazelwood, in which he referred to the Allens as his brothers and sisters, that we find they were children of Agnes Hazelwood's first marriage. The three wills, read alongside each other, demonstrate how useful wills can be to family history research by identifying the extended family relationships at play. In the absence of family members, wills can also position someone in their broader social network, identifying neighbours and colleagues, and helping provide a positive identification for that individual through those connections. They can give us a sense of the place in society in which the man or woman writing the will existed. They can also provide a glimpse of someone's personality, especially before the more common use of standard and repetitive legal language in the 18th century. That personality comes through in extracts such as these. In 1658, a goldsmith of London named Anthony Peniston, as was typical at this time, left a bequest to benefit the poor, but he was very specific about who would be eligible, and more importantly, who he did not consider to be worthy. This bread and money should be given to them that have behaved themselves honestly and conscionably, and not to them that have been stealers of corn or hedge breakers, or to any that have been in the least suspected for witches or wizards. I also wonder what lay behind the bequest by John Aylett Stowe in 1781, which instructed his executors to lay out 5 guineas in the purchase of a picture of the viper biting the benevolent hand of the person who saved him from perishing in the snow, and to present it to Edward Bearcroft KC. And in 1839, Frances D'Arblay, now better known as the writer Fanny Burney, specified in her will that her corpse should not be subject to anatomical dissection, stating that science could owe nothing to so worn and weary a machine, and my soul it cannot catch. Many of the bequests left by the testator in his or her will were land or money, but personal possessions are also sometimes listed, giving an idea of the items of clothing, furniture, jewellery or books which were particularly prized by the giver. One note of warning, though, is that a will is merely a statement of intent. The writer may on occasion have been rather optimistic about the bequests that he or she was leaving, and the executor, after debts were paid, may not always have been able to pay out the sums or locate the items promised. Of course, before you can appreciate the contents of a will, you have to find it first. Unfortunately, before 1858, when a national probate system was introduced, finding a will can be a bit complicated. There was a network of hundreds of church courts around England and Wales, all of which were responsible for proving wills. The courts were arranged hierarchically, with archdeacons' courts towards the bottom, bishops' courts in the middle, and at the top, the archbishops' courts, known as the prerogative courts of Canterbury and York. The court used to prove a will was largely determined by where the deceased person had property. And you can see here the area in yellow is Canterbury, the area in pink is York. For example, if it was held across 2 archdeaconries, it would be proved in the bishop's consistory court. If held across 2 dioceses, it would be proved in the relevant prerogative court. Most of these church court records can be found in county record offices, with the prerogative court records held at the National Archives for Canterbury, and at the Borthwick Institute for York. Many indexes to people leaving wills have been published, in books or online, but the situation differs for each court, so it's worth doing your homework to establish which courts may have covered the area where your ancestor had property, and to find out what indexes exist. Over 1 million wills dating from 1384 to 1858 are searchable by the name of the testator on the National Archives website as part of our Discovery catalogue. Be aware that the spelling of the surname involved may differ from that used later or even in other contemporary documents, so try variants and wildcards. The Prerogative Court of Canterbury was also responsible for proving the wills of those who died at sea, and, under another name, was the only probate court operational during the period of the Commonwealth in the 1650s. This 1650s period is particularly important, as this is the time when other family history sources can run dry, with the absence of many parish register entries in the middle of the 17th century. An informative will from that period may help you jump over the gap of other evidence back to an earlier generation. In many cases, you may be able to find 2 different versions of a will in a particular archive. One may be the original will, signed and sealed by your ancestor, either written in their handwriting or in that of a professional clerk. The other will be the formal registered copy, written out by the staff of the ecclesiastical court, often into a large bound volume. The wills that you can access online from the National Archives are the latter type of will, having been entered into one of thousands of registers in Record Series Prop 11, like the one you can see here. These can be searched by the testator's name, place of residence, occupational status, and the date of probate. Occasionally they may have a particularly ornate introductory page, as you can see here, but don't expect to find illustrations most of the time. We also hold hundreds of thousands of original wills in Record Series Prop 10. These are not indexed by name or available online, but they are arranged by the month of probate and the first letter of the surname. They used to be stored in rooms with coal fires, so they can be quite sooty on the outside. Most wills contain some standard features. In the first few lines, you can expect to find the testator's name, his or her place of residence and status or occupation. So in this case, we read, I, Samuel Pepys, of the City of Westminster, Esquire. You may also find a statement regarding their state of bodily and mental health, included to demonstrate that they were fully capable of determining their final wishes. Pepys specifies he is in sound mind and memory. Wills were an opportunity for the testator to consider their soul as well as their material possessions, and most wills before the 18th century include a bequest of that soul to God and other religious sentiments. They would often include a statement about their burial, either leaving it to their executors to decide, or making detailed statements about the location and style of the burial and mourning required. Then, the bulk of the will focused upon bequests of real property, that is to say land and buildings subject to common law and manorial customs, and of personal property, which was disposed of through a testament and was subject to the jurisdiction of church courts. You should be aware that land was sometimes passed to the heir according to legal custom or existing settlements, so may not be mentioned in the will at all. A will should appoint one or more executors to administer the estate after death, and sometimes overseers would also be appointed to check up on the work of the executors. Here, Pepys appoints his most dear friend, William Hewer. The date of writing usually appears either at the beginning or the end of the will, and also at the end there will be the signatures or marks and seals of the testator and witnesses. There may also be one or more codicils, or additions to the will, covering changes to the testator's wishes, perhaps because of a death in the family, the purchase or sale of the property, or a dispute with a former legatee. After the will, in the registered copy, and sometimes annotated on the original, you may then see a probate clause, in Latin until 1733, which records the formal processing of the will in the ecclesiastical court and the appointment of the executors to administer the terms of the will. Having mentioned that the probate clause is in Latin before 1733, except for the 1650s, I can reassure you that most wills are in English, especially after about 1500. There are other documents which you may find when searching for a will. Some wills are structured differently, especially when they were what is known as nuncupative wills. These were wills that were spoken on someone's deathbed and sworn to by witnesses present. Understandably, these were usually simple bequests, mentioning only a few names. Executors and administrators were required to value the personal property owned by the deceased at the time of their death, and to produce a list known as an inventory. Sadly, only a small proportion of the wills we hold at the National Archives have associated inventories. But where these do survive, they often provide a list of rooms in the house, together with their furniture, fire irons and linens, as well as other interesting objects, to give a snapshot of our ancestors' living environment. They are usually recorded on long, thin rolls of parchment, which can stretch for quite a distance when unrolled. These inventories can be searched by name in our catalogue. In this example from 1686, we see the rooms of the house identified, and items, such as an Indian quilt and a looking-glass, listed. In some cases, it can be disappointing to find out an ancestor who you know to have owned property did not leave a will. There may still be records which provide some information, though. Acts of administration were produced, allowing the next of kin, or a creditor, to distribute the estate according to the law. Associated documents, such as bonds and renunciations, can also provide useful information about relatives and other connections. Wills could also sometimes be disputed, often by relatives who expected to be left more than they received. Such disputes can be very informative, exploring earlier versions of wills and the state of mind of the testator when they wrote their final will. Other courts could be involved in testamentary disputes, particularly Chancery and the High Court of Delegates, and records from these courts are also held by the National Archives. I hope I've convinced you that wills are wonderful sources for family history. We have detailed research guides on the National Archives website, which can help you find and understand wills for your own research purposes, so take a look at those if you're interested. I wish you the best of luck in your research.